first decided to write a book about Robin of Sherwood, I didn't initially know what I was going to find and how much work was going to be involved. Robin of Sherwood is one of the most successful television programmes, certainly of the 1980s. It still has a huge fan following. People write websites about it. It's often talked of in hallowed terms as being the definitive interpretation of the Robin Hood legend. I thought, with so much love and care for the programme, with the official fan club still on the go, it was about time somebody wrote a book about it. I'd wanted to read that book for a long time. After waiting 30 years for that, and no one having published one, I thought I may as well have a go myself, and I resolved to write a book. As I investigated Robin of Sherwood, it became clear quite early on that I wanted to look specifically at the history of the production of the programme, but also about the time it was set. So I ended up researching the 1980s and the state of television at that time, but also looking into medieval England, medieval Europe, and all the other influences from history, myth and literature that were to be found in the programme. Richard Carpenter, the creator of Robin of Sherwood, was clearly a very literate man, and he put so much research into the programme. He read all the available books on Robin Hood at the time, and it's clear that a lot of this found its way to the programme through him. There's stuff hidden in the programme that he probably didn't know was there, and I didn't know was there until I started writing about it. Quotes from obscure Norse mythology, bits of real history that have been dropped in, things that actually happened, and we see those in the programme. It's fascinating and it was fascinating to unravel all of that and write about it for the book Hooded Man. I think the reason the series has survived is because it has a unique place in British, in the sort of the history of British myth. Because what Richard Carpenter was doing, unlike other modern Robin Hood productions like BBC's recent Robin Hood or Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, the one with all the medieval Americans, what Robin of Sherwood tries to do is it builds on the original ballads of Robin Hood, from the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries, but it also becomes a ballad in itself by adding new elements. It adds the sword and sorcery element of Robin of Sherwood, which had never been done before in Robin Hood in any great way. So suddenly Carpenter's taken the original English myth of Robin Hood and added this brand new element of witchcraft, of wizardry, of devils and demons and Lucifer. And he's put all of those into Robin Hood where they'd never been before. So he's bringing in things like Herne the Hunter and the fact that the English people of the time had a sort of pagan mythology. Although, as I came to find out when I wrote the book, it was actually pagan mythology from a few hundred years earlier. But he brought those myths, those legends which hadn't been present in Robin Hood before, and they work wonderfully. They dovetail perfectly. I mean, the series itself is also an incredibly modern one in certain ways. It's very realistic in its approach to violence and death. Although there's no blood in the programme, but it shows how people would have had fights back then, sort of realistic fights in a way. And so the people become characters in themselves, real characters, not just the stereotypes from fiction. Little John isn't just a big bloke; he becomes a socialist, fighting for the poor and for the oppressed. Will Scarlet becomes almost a modern-day football hooligan, and certainly a violent man. Rather than the dandyish peacock he perhaps been in the past, he's Scarlet because of the blood. The other characters, Marion, probably the key character in Robin of Sherwood in many ways. Marion, in the first episode, begins out as the wilting maiden, the virginal sort of damsel in distress that she'd been in the past. But over the course of Robin of Sherwood, she becomes an emancipated woman, a fighter along with the boys in the band. Hooded Man is a book about Robin of Sherwood, as you've probably guessed. We decided, whilst writing the book and editing the book down, that in fact we were going to make it 2 volumes. And the reason for this is that there was so much to be found in the series that I could write about. So in the end we've ended up with 2 volumes, one featuring the 13 episodes, depending on how you count them, with Michael Praed, and one featuring the 13 episodes, again depending on how you count them, with Jason Connery. It's a good point to split the series as well, not just because of the 2 Robins, but a different producer for the final year. And the first half of the series with Michael Praed, the first 2 series, have a very specific style which does change towards the 3rd season, and it was interesting to look at that and to write about that. On the way, the books cover a lot of the many controversies and other issues surrounding Robin Hood, which have been there since probably the start of fandom. Certainly the issue of episode order is a big one, and that's covered in the books about what clues there are to find out how to watch the series. It's obviously a key point when you try to write a book about how to watch it. Other issues along the way are covered. There's a timeline, which is probably the most contentious issue. I suspect my approach will have a few people with a few comments on that. But a timeline which covers both historical aspects and also the fictional aspects in the programme itself. And to an extent it tries to marry those together, but it's really presenting the information that we have and the way that we are presented it. I also include maps of all the filming locations used in the series, and descriptions of where these places are, and even how to get there. There are coordinates to put into Google Earth or Google Maps or your sat-nav to find out where they are. I've visited a couple of locations myself, I think 4 by this point: Alnwick, Bamborough, Hulme Priory, and the other one, which is Bridburn Priory. I had some fantastic days out at these places, and it's fascinating to walk in the same places where the crew themselves walked 30 years ago. Brilliant times. It's well worth going to a location if you get the chance, and really worthwhile, and it added a lot to my appreciation of the programme and what they did in those places. Also in the books, there will be a family tree in the 2nd volume, showing how all the characters are related to each other and to the ruling houses of England in a way. Interesting things come out of that. You realise that Robert of Huntingdon was related to the King of England eventually by marriage and by familial relationship to the King. He's a descendant or a cousin slightly removed of Macbeth from the Shakespeare play. Fascinating stuff, and well worth a look as you work your way through the book. As well as all the historical aspects, there's a detailed investigation of the making of the programme. One thing I've really enjoyed is finding out the dates things were produced, where the cast were, where the crew were on a particular day, how long it took to make an episode, and the quite quick turnaround times. I mean, it was around 2 weeks to produce an episode or to shoot an episode, but that in itself produced some interesting facts. At one stage the production was overrunning slightly and 2 units were on the go at the same time. There's also factors like travelling time to get to locations, problems with locations such as the Tides Barn at Bradford-on-Avon, which had been the Great Hall location for the first 2 series, wasn't available for the 3rd series, so the entire structure was rebuilt inside an old cathedral in Bristol Clifton city centre. Amazing stuff. The scale of that, the sheer idea of doing that, it's mind-blowing, and that's how television programmes are made. I hope people enjoy the book. I certainly enjoyed writing it. There's a lot of information that's come out of it, and I'd like other people to get some of that and have their own thoughts on it, and let me know what they thought of it as well. I am available on the book's Facebook page, for instance. We'll put a link for that down below. But there. I hope that people come along to the launch of the book at the 30th anniversary convention in Wales next month as I speak, on the 3rd of May, and people can buy the book there, hopefully have a chat with me, let them know what they think of it, and I may be able to do a few signatures on them as well. But I'll certainly be giving a talk there. If people would like to come along, have a chat with me, that's brilliant, and I'd love to see you there. in many ways, the second volume of Hooded Man may be my favourite of the two books. I think the third season hasn't necessarily had a good reputation all of the time amongst a certain proportion of fandom. I'm sure I quite agree with that, and I probably agree with it even less, having written about it so much. There is a lot in the Jason Connery programmes, maybe not quite so much as many as the mythological references in all cases, but certainly Anthony Horowitz brings a lot to the programme, a very different style of writing from Richard Carpenter, but influenced by Carpenter's work, and it does add a new aspect to the programme, which is well worth doing, and it produces some fantastic episodes. The second volume also includes a history of and a discussion of the spin-offs from the programme. So we cover the novelisations, the game books, which are slightly rather better than they have any right to be. The comic strips, which are fantastic. Difficult to get hold of these days. Very much of their own style. It's not really Robin of Sherwood as we know it, but it's an interesting new slant on the programme. It's a slightly generic Robin Hood, but with the elements that were specific to Robin of Sherwood. Fascinating to read. I've read every single one of those, and they're brilliant. And you should try and get hold of them. And the book details all of those comic strips and tells you about what the stories were and what was in them. There's the history of the DVD releases, the VHS releases, the Blu-ray releases, which are fantastic, and buy them. But beautiful quality, and the release on the series of DVD was, Blu-ray was one of the catalysts for me writing this, because it just gives a completely new version of the programme. It's like watching it fresh. The Blu-ray, on Blu-ray, the series shines, it's magnificent, and it looks fantastic, and you can see details that you never saw before, and well worth buying, so the book covers that. What's become really clear as I've come to the final point of writing the book is that there's so much love for the programme. It's still enjoyed. People have so much care for it, and they put so much of themselves into it, and so they buy my book and they find it's giving them something that they appreciate. People care for this programme. They want to read about it. They want to know about it, and I hope you want to read about it and know about it too. So buy my book. There it is. So that's got to be enough, isn't it?